Miller.
Yeah.
Mr. Irvine.
Yes.
Dr. Sen.
Present.
Mr. Peterson.
Present.
Mr. Youngblood.
Present.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales.
Present.
And Director Chairman Silva.
Present.
We have a quorum with all 7 members present.
Our first order of business is the approval of the committee minutes of August 10, 2016. The minutes were previously distributed. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Second.
Would the
Mr.
secretary call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Irvine.
Yes.
Dr. Sen.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales.
Yes.
And Chairman Silva.
Abstain.
Thank you. An abstention. The motion passed with 6 yes votes and 1 abstention.
Our next order of business is the review of the finance report. Jeremy, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jeremy Fine, the CFO. I'll walk through the July numbers. They follow a similar form of what we've talked about over the past several months. But just to highlight on the July revenues, we see fare and pass revenues slightly down due to some of the similar factors that we've talked about in prior meetings. On the reduced fare subsidy, we see this down on a budgetary basis and flat to July of 2015. As we've talked about in prior meetings, we did see the state's stopgap budget implemented, so we've seen a half of that amount that we anticipated for 16 come in, through that measure. The good news is for 17, there was also a portion of 17 approved, but again, we'll see for subsequent action for 17 if we get the full 28 million. But again, the good news is through that stopgap measure, the 14 was approved, but again, that conforms with what we saw in 2015, but again, was below what we anticipated for the 16 budget. The non-fare box revenue, we see that slightly up, and this goes to continued efforts to increase our advertising concession revenues as well as the sale of some surplus properties. So we continue to see strong growth on that factor. So overall, we're down, but down fairly moderately here of 2.4 million for the month, and that conforms with what we see on a year-to-date basis, which I'll talk about in a moment. On an average fare basis, we see this slightly up, 4 cents, and on the free rides, we've continued to have very strong enforcement efforts to ensure that scofflaws, pay for the rides associated with their rides, and that free pass users are indeed authorized free pass users. So we see free rides about 1 million less than what we saw in July of 2015. On a year-to-date basis, again, like I said, they follow a similar form as what we talked about on a July basis. Fare and pass revenue is slightly down. The reduced fare subsidy, we talked about, the benefit of having the budgetary, the stopgap budget passed so that we can at least get half of what we anticipated. And then the non-fare box revenues, we see those again, strong growth there due to those factors that I mentioned. So overall, we're down about $7 million on a budgetary year-to-date basis. But as I'll talk about on the expense side of the house, the good news is that we have very strong expense controls in place that more than offset the slight decrease in revenues. So we'll talk about that in a moment, but we have about 9.6 million of positive variance on the expenses, so that more than offsets the slight drag that we have here on revenues. On expenses, as I mentioned, for July, we see labor basically coming in flat. For the month, we see materials slightly favorable to budget, and then fuel and power, as we've talked about before, because of the fact that we locked in a predominant share of our usage for 2016 at very favorable market levels last year, we've been able to have a positive budget variance for 2016. So we continue to reap the benefits of that. Security services come in slightly better than expected And then other expenses, as I mentioned, we have very tight controls in place to continue to monitor the contracts and other expenses that we have to ensure that we continue to see positive budget variance at or greater than whatever we need to due to what's going on the revenue side of the house. So on a year-to-date basis, again, all of the subcategories follow the same form as what I just spoke about with regard to July. But again, that bottom number there, $9.6 million of positive budget variance so far for the year, more than offsets those revenues. So again, have to hand it to the whole authority and the finance team here trying to ensure that those tight controls remain in place to ensure that we continue to have positive budget variance. With regard to the commodities that we buy, we have fuel, power, and natural gas on a positive basis on a monthly and year-to-date basis. As I mentioned, we bought 80% of our 2016 volume across the board on fuel, power, and natural gas. And as we talked about in the prior board meeting, we also have been starting our pre-purchases for 2017 and beyond. Again, the commodity market is very favorable right now, so we're able to buy at levels at or below where we were at in 2016. So again, very favorable conditions. We've already locked in 50% of our 2017 volume for fuel, diesel fuel, and then 60% for power on the electricity side. So again, we look to continue to buy incremental additional purchases throughout 2016 so that we have the same type of budget certainty for 17 that we had this year. Any questions with regard to the financial report?
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, I got a concern regarding our revenues that keep declining monthly. Have there been a study on what's driving that declination of revenues regarding ridership options, and what are we doing to correct that?
So we continue to work with the planning department, and we also have MIT engaged as part of the process to dive down, do a deeper dive into the factors that are driving the overall ridership. We'll be circling back, and Carol Morey and her group are really kind of leading the charge on that, and we can get you more details as those become available. But we are diving down and truly understanding the factors that are driving the ridership trends.
I see that the average fare was $126. However, our average fare, of the year is $116. So there's a lot of difference with something that we did in July. That really pushed the average fare. A lot. And
So-
that could help us, for the revenue, of course.
Yeah, so the average fare is just a calculation based on the total revenue for whatever period we're talking about divided by the number of riders. So it ebbs and flows based on the numerator and the denominator numbers in each of those periods, whether it's a July period or a year-to-date period.
So you're going to see some seasonality in the average fare. So in the summer, we don't have the student rides, and that's a 75-cent fare. So you're typically going to see a higher average fare in the summer and then a lower average fare during the school year.
So it's basically, students, not being present, and more tourists, I would imagine, in this summer.
That's a big part of it.
Any other questions? Go ahead, please.
Just in terms of, I don't know, as you take a look at what's going on around the country, I mean, I wouldn't really compare gas prices because I don't think that would be an apple-to-apple comparison in terms of New York, Boston, because again, a lot of that is controlled by states or general assemblies or local municipalities in terms of taxes. But if you take a look, they all have Uber, they've got Lyft. Are you seeing the same type of trend around the country in other large transit cities with sort of a decrease? And then the other thing that I don't see here, I was just thinking about, in past years, we've seen while bus ridership has declined a little, we've seen an uptick in rail. Is that still the case here where you know, yeah, the revenues are off, but we continue to see strong rail. Rail continues to be consistent. If there's a fall off, it's more on the bus side. So those are two separate questions. One, have we looked around the country to see in other large transit cities the impact that low gas prices, Lyft, again, I would take out the gas prices, but really Uber and Lyft having an impact. And then the second issue would be, do we still see strong ridership on the rail side, and where we're seeing the decline being more on the bus side?
So you're absolutely right. There are nationwide trends due to low gas prices and also car sharing services that are resulting in declines in transit ridership on a national basis. As far as the rail ridership, it does continue to be strong in the peak periods, although we're seeing a little bit of a fall off in the non-peak periods, potentially due to car sharing services and Uber Pool and those types of services.
No,
Any other questions?
The only reason I mentioned it, I think going forward as we start to prepare for the FY17 budget and just looking, you know, just forecasting, I think we've just got to factor all of that.
Absolutely,
I
and
don't
that's-
see the trend declining. I think you're going to continue to see these other alternatives continue to pick up, so we just need to factor that in kind of going forward.
Absolutely, and we continue to work with the planning department on, you know, driving those larger factors and how they impact the budget. So that is being taken into account.
Go
Let me
ahead,
just
please, Doctor.
raise one issue. The non-peak rail ridership decline is a bit disturbing because peak is, of course, you know, hits up against capacity and so on. Revenue is really generated to a large extent by the non-peak part. Do we have any idea why that's happening? Is it really the Ubers and the gas prices, or is it something? Because off-peak, of course, is also less congestion on the streets.
So I think, as I indicated in a previous board meeting, we're really doing a deep dive, and we're looking very carefully. We're surveying our customers, and we'll be prepared to report to the board once that survey is completed.
When is the survey due?
By the end of the year.
This year? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would also point out one other factor that I think is playing into the ridership conversation, which you did mention, and that's car ownership. If you look at the car manufacturers, they're having a record year. Not only is gas cheaper, but more and more people are buying cars, which also has an impact on this conversation, especially in the off-peak period where, as you pointed out, Director Sen, there's less congestion and therefore it's easier to take advantage of that option. I also think that, as we discussed on a number of occasions, millennials who do not have cars and are not interested in having cars are very much taking advantage of choice and using technology to make those choices, which is one reason why the Ventra app has been such a big deal for CTA, because that's how they're deciding between taking transit or getting an Uber vehicle or taking a bike share option or using Zipcar or something like that. So all of those, I think, are playing into this conversation. And I can tell you just from conversations I personally had with other transit agency CEOs, it is the same set of concerns that we're seeing across the country. And it's one of the reasons why technology and other things are becoming a bigger and bigger conversation in transit as ways to basically deal with that, along with, as you've heard me mention on a number of occasions, finding ways to speed up our vehicles. So that they are much more competitive with single occupancy vehicles in terms of getting you from point A to point B a lot faster and much more reliably.
Carol, last question. Ridership is higher probably in the summer months. We've got festivals and all of that than the winter months, right?
Our strongest months tend to be September and October.
September, October. The only reason I mention it, I know over in Illinois Medical District, Divvy is just such a big deal. We always talk about Uber, Lyft, gas prices, but I'm telling you, bike ridership is just, you go from the South Loop on, and I was out at Western, 107th and Western, where people, 3 or 4 years ago, where folks would take a bus to go 8 blocks, now or 6 blocks, they're now riding the Divvy bike. So it's, that's something else too, which is another trend that, again, I think is only going to increase especially during the summer months. I mean, you're down by Navy Pier on the board there, again, you see the bikes everywhere now in the summer months where folks used to ride buses to festivals. They're now taking the bikes and storing them and then riding back, so.
As we understand these trends a bit better, it might be worthwhile trying to develop some ideas as to how we should react to them.
Well, I think that's exactly what we are doing. And I think as Carol indicated, you know, the first step to really figuring out how to basically address these trends is to understand what your customers are doing and how they're responding to these options, which is one of the reasons why the survey information is so important to us. And then that will then allow us to develop strategies either through the way we provide our service and or how we interact with our customers to put us in a better position to be more competitive, to hold on to the customer base that we have and try to continue to expand it.
But the trend, train versus bus, okay, is still, I mean, very strong, right?
It is, especially as Carol indicated during rush hour. At the end of the day, from both a reliability standpoint and from a speed standpoint, which is the point I was making about bus, our train service is still a much preferred option for exactly those reasons. That's when the congestion is the highest, that's when it's much more difficult to get around, and the train service is obviously a very efficient way to get from work or other places to where you're going to go. But as you know, that's because we have dedicated right-of-way that we control that allows us to do that. Unfortunately, I don't have the same experience for a major portion of my bus system, which is why the conversations we're having about how to improve bus and the discussion we've been having about LoopLink and other things are important, because that's really, in my opinion, the future for how you actually start to remain competitive on the bus side of the house.
Any other questions? If there are no any questions, thank you, Jeremy. Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance amending Ordinance 015-119, approving the fiscal year 2016-2020 capital improvement program. Jeremy.
Thank you. This amendment, as prior amendments have done, amends the capital improvement program to add in additional projects. This amendment adds in $1.1 billion of additional projects dedicated to the RPM Phase 1 project. And this is a critical enabling step for us to be able to secure the FFGA and the TIFIA loan that are associated with the Phase 1 project. We actually also have in the audience today Patience Dean from the TIFIA office, who is our TIFIA administrator for the projects that we've already received TIFIA loans for, but it's kind of indicative of the fact of how this is an important part of that larger authorization. The increase here will take the total CIP from $2.4 billion to $3.5 billion. The changes here include the core capacity grant of a little over $900 million, an upsize of the TIFIA loan from about $450 to about $622 million, and because we received and we qualified for a larger TIFIA loan, we're able to slightly downsize the associated bonds as well. So again, all of those roll up to the larger $1.1 billion increase that we're adding into to the CIP for 2016 to 2020.
Is there a way to increase the TIFIA loan?
The TIFIA loan is at its maximum capacity. There's a restriction on how much can be funded through the FFGA and the TIFIA loan, and we're at that level, that 80% level.
So we 100% okay what we can get?
Yes. Yeah, we've gotten as much as we could through the program.
A real dumb question. I should know better. What does out years mean in that table?
So the CIP only talks about 2016 to 2020, and that's part of the larger federal discussion about a 5-year CIP. So out years are years beyond 2020.
But the TIFIA loan is secured by Fairbox, right?
The TIFIA loan will be secured by Farebox but paid by the new transit TIF.
But if, perish the thought, but if the TIF doesn't go through for some reason, it's still, the money's still there. I mean, although that might
Yeah,
raise
the-
other problems.
The transit TIF will be approved, and, continues to be on track to get that approval. So there's no question there on whether or not the funds will be there. But again, we do have the ultimate backstop of the Farebox revenues, which we pledged to other TIFIA loans, such as the 95th Street, the Urinal Blue, and the rail cars.
Are we also pretty sure about the 5309 funds and the CMAQ funds?
So
The bringing forward of the CMAQ? funds?
Yes, so we've already received, a letter back from, the CMAQ, with regard to the CMAQ funding, that's been approved by the CMAQ board. So those funds are locked in, and then the larger FFGA will again be approved in conjunction, kind of on the same timeline as the TIFIA loan. So, and that will be in January of 2017.
Thanks.
And during the process, okay, you will have enough cash, okay, for,
Have enough cash?
funds, okay, for during the financing project.
Yes, yeah. So we have all of the associated sources of funding that are, supported, that are either locked up already or will come online through the closing of the FFGA and the TIFIA loan. And again, the funding sources basically provide that liquidity that you're referring to.
Any other questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Chicago through its Department of Transportation for the purchase and installation of authority fare equipment at various locations. Jeremy?
Thank you. As you know, CDOT constructs various transit stations and facilities for us from time to time. As part of that construction process, it requires the installation of fare equipment, whether it's the machines, the gates, the swings, and whatnot. CTA has a contract with Cubic, whereas the CDOT does not have a contract with Cubic. So what we are doing here is the city has requested the CTA to use that contract on its behalf to purchase the fare equipment machines, the gates and the swings and whatnot. And the city will pay all of the associated costs with that equipment and the installation thereof. And that this IGA allows the city to disperse payment to the CTA for these projects as well as other projects in the future.
And the property of the equipment is going to be CTA?
Correct. As with prior iterations, the CTA will continue to have ownership of the equipment.
Any questions? President Carter will now like to say a few words updating our LoopLink project.
Thank you, Chairman Silva. I think in light of this ordinance, which is talking about the city purchase of Cubic equipment, I thought it'd be a good opportunity to give you a brief update on the Loop Link and to inform you about a new pilot that will begin on September 19th, this Monday, to begin testing prepaid bus boarding at Madison Dearborn Loop Link Station. This will be the first time that we've tested prepaid boarding in the Loop Link corridor, and it will be the latest of some of the many benefits that Loop Link provides to CTA customers. Loop Link is already improving bus speeds and service, and as I indicated to you earlier, that's a critical component, in my opinion, in terms of increasing ridership and holding on to the ridership that we currently have. And Loop Link has been further enhanced by the recent opening of the new Union Station Transit Center, which has created a friendlier, more convenient environment for commuters to board and exit CTA buses, and has helped to relieve traffic congestion next to Union Station. The 3-month pilot at Madison and Dearborn will be conducted during the evening rush period between the hours of 3 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. on weekdays. During that period, our customers will tap their Ventra cards on mobile card readers at either station entrance and then enter the station's designated prepaid area, which includes an overhead canopy for weather protection, CJ bus tracker screens, and seating. In fact, prepaying bus fares at this LoopLink station will be very much like paying fares on the L, where customers pay their fares before they board the train. When their bus arrives, customers can board buses more quickly because they don't have to pay fares as they board. Currently, it can take up to 4 minutes to board one bus during the PM peak. We expect this boarding time to be reduced significantly so buses can keep moving more quickly and customers can get to their destination sooner. This particular LoopLink station serves 6 heavily traveled routes, including the J14, excuse me, Jeffrey Jump, the number 20 Washington, the number 56 Milwaukee, the number 60 Blue Island, 26th Street, and the number 124 Navy Pier and number 157 Streeterville Taylor Street routes. It also serves the number 19, which provides special event service to the United Center. Altogether, this means the buses are scheduled to serve the Madison-Dearborn platform every 1 to 2 minutes during the PM peak. We estimate 2,300 customers use the station daily, and an average of about 830 boardings take place daily during the evening rush, which should give us a clear look at how prepaid boarding will perform against existing boarding conditions and help us to determine the future viability of prepaid boarding elsewhere within the system. You may recall we are doing a similar project at the Belmont Blue Line station. Though we are still in the early stages of that pilot, we have seen positive results in time savings and good feedback from our customers. This pilot is the latest of the many service improvements we've made to bus service, including the expansion last week of service on several Southside routes and the kickoff of a new pilot bus service on the 31st Street. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about the pilot itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for President Carter?
Sure. Just one question. Will people be able to board through the front and the rear doors, or only through the front?
I know that on the Belmont Blue Station, we actually did allow them to board through both doors. Usually that requires additional personnel to accomplish that, but there's no reason they can't use both doors. And I know, Carol, do you know if that's part of the plan?
So some of our buses allow the driver to open the rear door from the front door, and in those cases, we'll ask the drivers to open it. As Dorval indicated, it does require additional personnel to open them on some of our equipment. And in those cases, if the extra personnel is available, they will do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I do. So
Go ahead,
currently,
please.
it takes, you said, about 4 minutes when it's at peak hour. Do we have any idea what the reduction of time is going to be?
So on the Belmont Blue pilot, before the pilot started, we timed 67 seconds for an average boarding, and we've reduced that to 30 seconds. So we'd expect to see similar time savings on this pilot.
That's significant. And how will we be promoting this?
I know that our media and communications people have been working to put material out informing the public of the pilot itself. And I know that we'll have extra personnel at the station to both explain how to access the pre-board boarding process and to provide additional information to them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Terrific idea.
Oh, I should also point out that we got a lot of news coverage this morning on the morning news cycle as the press release went out for this. So
Thank
that's the
you,
other place to
President.
hear
Great. That's
about it.
How long
fantastic.
does the pilot
Good.
run for?
We're planning to pilot it for a few months to see how it works.
So you think first of the year, 6 months, 3 months?
We're thinking 3 months to start.
Okay. And then if it's successful, we could spread it throughout the system.
Yeah, we could potentially roll it out to all 8 LoopLink stations.
Okay.
So do we have metrics in place after evaluation to see how successful the pilot will be?
Absolutely. My staff has been out measuring boarding times, and we'll continue to monitor it throughout the pilot.
Thank you.
Any other
That's good.
questions?
No, all we need is more signal priority, and we'll.
I'm working on that. That's part of my master plan.
If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of blanket railroad protecting liability insurance for policy year November 1st, 2016 through October 31st, 2017. Steve, good morning.
Good morning, Steve Wood, Deputy General Counsel, CTA Law Department. We're coming to the board today for approval of a blanket railroad protective insurance policy. This is an annual policy that the CTA has had in place for 7 years, and this ordinance is for the renewal term of November 1, 2016 to October 31 of 2017. The policy is a blanket program covering all CTA contractors and certain non-contractors who perform work within 50 feet of any CTA railroad right-of-way. The CTA enrolls the businesses and prorates the cost of the insurance across the construction projects such that the CTA is not out of pocket for the cost of the insurance. Because the CTA purchases the policy, however, we're able to use our bargaining power in the marketplace to secure a much lower rate than individual contractors, individual DBEs, or non-contractors could secure. Our insurance broker, Mesero, again marketed the renewal of this policy, and Aspen Specialty Insurance offered the best price and program components. There was more competition this year for our business, and so we were able to negotiate a price reduction of about 13% for the average weighted premium compared to last year's program. We believe Aspen will provide excellent service and responsiveness, and we recommend renewal with this carrier. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is the reason why we got the reduction just because there was more competition, or is the insurance business okay also
I think we're
down?
facing a softer insurance market in general. We had a price reduction last year as well, when we only had 2 competitors for our business instead of 3 this year. So I think the additional reduction is due to the competition, but there is a softness in this market that we're taking advantage of.
Is there a way to get some of the other agencies to come together, okay, and
That's something we can look into.
Create-
It's a little bit difficult because Metra, for example, is the only other rail right-of-way sort of owner transit company, but they don't control 100% of their rail. For us, it's pretty easy to underwrite because the CTA doesn't have any freight, any other competitors on its rail system. So it's pretty clean for an insurance underwriter to look at our system and have a sense of what the real risks are. I think Metra is a very different kind of agency in that regard.
any other questions?
Just a curious question. You're recommending Aspen for 2016 to 2017. Who was the 15 to 16 carrier? Was it Aspen as well?
Who was the, I'm sorry?
Carrier.
For last year, it was
Yeah.
Liberty.
Okay, Liberty, okay.
Yes.
So when we went to compare coverages on an apples-to-apples basis, is there anything different in the Aspen coverages that would set it apart from Liberty other than price?
Not really. It was, we have a certain set of sort of program components for our contractors, for our non-contractors, for our CMs who need right of entry certificates or coverage. And they were able to meet those components as well as the price. The way they underwrite the program also is unique in that they are looking at our entire program and not trying to underwrite each individual piece, not looking just at the Dan Ryan, just at the Wilson, and trying to sort of calculate a premium with respect to those individual projects. They are looking at our entire program.
So it's a guaranteed cost and not a SIR, a large deductible?
Correct. So there is a 3-layer program where above $60 million for the project, it's at one rate, which is a lower rate per $100. And then as it goes down through the different layers, it's a slightly higher cost per $100.
Any other questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So,
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Our final order of business today is the review of 11 purchase and sales award recommendations. Presenter is Ellen McCormick. Ellen, how
Good
are
morning.
you? Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We will start with contracts numbers A1 and A2. Any questions?
I've got a question regarding A1. And it's more on the DBEs. You know, when I look at the scope of work in terms of camera system installation, I'm like, they couldn't find someone locally, they had to find someone in Florida. Is there,
So we provide them the pool of DBEs that they are allowed to use from our Illinois UCP, and then
Right.
we encourage them and we network with them to network with all of our DBEs and the ones that attend our event, and that is the one they're chosen. Unfortunately, we can't ask them to use local DBEs only, but we can provide the opportunity for our local DBEs to network with our firm.
yeah, I would just assume bringing personnel from Florida to Illinois to install cameras on our buses, that's an expense in itself. So either we're paying for it or they're paying for it. And if they're paying for it, it's coming out of their profit or they're adding it to, I just, you know, again, for a DBE, it's not like the work is that complicated. It shouldn't
It's not,
be.
and we have DBEs that do the work here,
Yeah.
and they're on other projects also.
Yeah, I'm just, again, I'm looking at it, and they're out of Florida, and again, you gotta fly them here, you gotta lodging and transportation to get them here, and then somebody's picking up that cost. When we've got local companies here, I'm just curious as to why they, you know, but anyway, I just wanted to raise that, because I see that on a couple of other proposals as well. It didn't seem like the work was that complicated, but we've got DBEs from Mississippi, nothing wrong with those states, but again, it seems like some of that work could be done here locally.
Any other questions for A1, and A2? Let's move to B1 to B through B4. Can you talk a little bit about B4, please?
So B3, I'm sorry, you said B4?
B4.
So this is a contract for the railroad ties, and this is a vehicle that we've used on several other procurements, and we find it really, really helpful. On commodities where the price fluctuates a lot, when we ask a vendor, we do what we call a blanket contract, and we ask a vendor to hold their prices for 3 years. What happens is we'll get a really high price, because they have to cover themselves in case the price rises. So I shouldn't say really high, but maybe higher than we would get if it was on a shorter term. What we do in a situation like this is we went with the vendors. There were 4, 1 was non-responsive. So the 3 that were here, we had them, what we do, we qualified them. We made sure they were able to deliver the product in the fashion that we need. And what we do is for every time we go out, we send an email to the 3 vendors, and we say, give us your price on this, on a particular order, a particular size order. So they know exactly what they can charge because they know exactly what they're supplying us and when they can supply it. So what we do is we get competition throughout the procurement. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. We have a contract and we have 3 contractors. So we don't have to go out every time. If there's a rush and we need these rail ties, we're able to get them quickly. Yet we're able to get procurement, we're able to get competition because each and every time they all compete. Now, in the first 90 days, Natural Wood had given us the lowest price. So for the first 90 days, any orders that we place will go to them. After that, when the using department has an order they want to send out, we send out an email and they all compete to get it back. So we've done this on several others. It actually works out really well. It also works out well if one of the companies was to go bankrupt, we have 2 others, or out of business, we have 2 others that we can fall back on. So it's been a really good procurement process for us.
Any other questions?
What other types of contracts would you do something like that with?
We do it with, when we sell the scrap metal for the rail cars. And we've done it with, we do it with various commodities like steel and so forth that the price fluctuates a lot. If it's something that you can kind of count on to be standard, it's just as easy to go out. Everyone knows exactly how much it's going to cost. It's kind of easier to budget. But when the price fluctuates a lot, sometimes vendors will say, I don't want to commit for 3 years. So it'll reduce competition. Or again, some of the ones that will say, okay, I'll commit for 3 years, but I'm going to maybe go in a little bit higher than I normally would have because I have to cover myself for any costs that could arise in the future.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So let's move to D1 and D2. Any questions for D1, D2? You also talk about D2, please.
So the CTA received a $1.25 million competitive federal grant in the FTA's TOD pilot program, specifically for the Red Purple Modernization Phase 1 project area. So we issued an RFP seeking a consultant to provide services to study TOD and other development opportunities, including a market analysis and a neighborhood redevelopment plan. The scope also included resources for extensive public outreach in connection with the development of the plan and services in connection with historic preservation required as part of the environmental clearance that FDA provided for the project. So the firm selected is a local Chicago firm. They provide planning and architectural services. Some of their past projects include the development of a master plan for the Illinois Medical District and the development of the Roosevelt Square Master Plan for the CHA. They're well qualified for this effort, and they were the highest ranking proposer out of the 6 proposals presented.
Have we used them before?
They're actually a new contractor
New
for
contract.
us, but they're very well qualified for this effort.
I just want to make a statement. The 60% almost DBE participation is tremendous. How did they go about doing that? Because we could probably duplicate it for other contracts.
So what we did was we invited all of our DBEs to our pre-bid meeting that we had for the contract, and then we also followed up with a networking event for the DBEs to meet any of the potential prime contractors. We reached out to our assist agencies and also any of our other community agencies that could let other businesses know about this opportunity because it was such a great opportunity. And the contractor networked with them, and we were able to get a very high commitment.
Any other questions?
Again, kind of as a follow-up to that, so they came up with the breakdown, or we came up with the breakdown with regards to the DBE?
They came up with the breakdown. We
Okay.
set a goal, and then they give us their commitment and tell us how they're going to achieve that commitment.
Okay, because there's a lot of different ones, which is great,
Yes.
but so they got creative then.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Let's move to contract number E1. Any questions? Let's move to contracts number G1 through G3. Any questions? Any questions in the G1 to G3? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place these contracts on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Ellen.
And I'll call the roll now.
Since there is no,
Right, I'll call the roll now then, Chairman.
yeah, but I'm gonna,
Right.
since there is no further business to come before this committee, may I have a motion to recommend board approval of the omnibus?
Excuse me, Chairman, we need to follow up on the motion to get the
Okay.
contracts into the
I'm
omnibus
sorry.
first,
There are no
and
further-
then we'll have another vote for the whole thing. So
Okay.
I think that motion was moved and approved by Director Youngblood and Director Peterson on
Let's-
moving the
let's go and
contracts
approve it.
into the omnibus. Okay. So that's just a vote on moving the contracts into the omnibus.
Yes.
Mr. Miller? Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Dr. Sen?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson? Yes. Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales?
Yes.
Chairman Silva?
Yes,
That motion is approved with 7 yes votes.
thank you. See, there is no further business to
No,
call.
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. Now we need to vote on recommending approval of the omnibus.
Yes. So moved.
Okay, so we just voted on getting the contract in the omnibus.
Yeah,
and
then
it's-
for the.
And now
okay.
this is the movement and the seconding to get.
I'll
the-
second.
On the omnibus.
Okay.
Got it. So we're going to vote on the omnibus right now.
Okay, very good.
Reverend Miller. Yes, Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Irvine.
Yes.
Dr. Sen.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Ms. Salvo Rosales.
Yes.
Chairman Silva.
Yes.
Yes, the motion to recommend approval to the board to approve the omnibus passes with 7 yes votes.
So now,
Right.
there's no further business to come before this committee. May I have a motion to recommend board approval of the omnibus?
We could just adjourn now,
Yeah,
Chairman.
Sure, we just did.
May I have a
It gets
second?
very confusing at the end.
With
So
the
we just-
secretary, okay? And we're done?
We just need a motion to
And
approve the
finally,
omnibus.
may I
Say
have a
aye.
motion to
I'm sorry,
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor,
So
say
moved.
aye.
Aye.
Now we're done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gets a little bit.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to call to order the regular scheduled meeting of the Chicago Transit Board for September 14, 2016. Would the secretary call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Irvine.
Here.
Dr. Sen.
Here.
Ms. Salvo Rosales.
Here.
Mr. Silva.
Here.
Mr. Youngblood.
Here.
Chairman Peterson.
Here.
We have a quorum of the board with all 7 members present.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business today is public comment. Greg?
Yes, sir, we have one speaker. Mr. Higgins, if you would like to step right up to that table right in front of you, either in front of one of the microphones. And please address the board and speak right into the microphone. And we limit our comments for each public comment speaker to 3 minutes, sir, so go right ahead.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
I want to thank the Chicago Transit Authority for these public community meetings. I want to thank Ms. Longini for maintaining correspondence with me via telephone and the mail. I have 2 matters of concern, smoking at the public bus stop shelters and this 18-inch rule of buses coming to the bus stop. Smokers seem to think that the bus shelters are the place to smoke now, which me as a non-smoker, I find it very irritating and aggravating. When you ask them to show a little consideration, they say, well, where's the sign? I was here first. I'm asking that CTA make some type of arrangement to continue. First of all, this is one of the best public transportation systems in the city, in America, and to continue to accommodate your passengers, get the little nooks and crannies out. If can signs be posted saying no smoking and that this be enforced. My second concern, it's funny, people judge you by your outward appearance, but my outward appearance doesn't tell people that I have suffered from multiple repetitive injuries and a degenerated fifth lumbar. Okay, so, and I use public transportation. I'm not out here trying to do a weightlifting contest. And when the bus is 18 inches from the curve, and then when the curve is elevated, and then you got about a 4-inch drop, and I'm trying to get my buggy up to the bus, and then it leaves the curve, and then my buggy hits the, just makes it onto the bus. Then I have bus drivers that look at me, oh man, come on. When I request the ramp, why do I have to argue about you lowering the ramp? Why can't you do your job and stop trying to assume or presume what you think I can do? I made a passenger request. I paid for these rides. So, and I will continue to report bus drivers that don't do their job. I should not have to argue with someone about lowering the ramp. If you can do something, how about a 12-inch rule? Just bring the bus a little closer. Accommodate people that are out here to go to food stops, and there's cars out here especially Wednesdays and Saturdays, and just pull that bus in a little bit closer. A little consideration for the cars, elders, and the disabled. It'll make it a lot easier for us. I want to thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. I've got your contact information. We'll be in touch with you, sir. Yeah, you can sit right back there if you want, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Higgins, I'm going to have my head of operations talk to you and get more information about where you catch the bus and what bus route you use. And I also have my head of the ADA office here too, if there are other issues we need to talk to you about, to make sure you're getting proper access to our bus service.
I'll be here.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Higgins and Chairman Pearson. That concludes the public comment section of today's meeting.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business today is the approval of the August 10th, 2016 board minutes that were previously distributed. I will now entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of August 10th, 2016.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Irvine.
Yes.
Dr. Sen.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales.
Yes.
Mr. Silva.
Abstain.
That's right, you weren't here last month. Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes and 1 abstention.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is executive session. It is my understanding, Karen, that there will be executive session today.
Yes, Chairman, we will have executive session
today pursuant to Section 2 of the Open Meetings Act, and specifically subparagraphs C2, C5, and C11. We have 3 matters.
Okay. Thanks, Karen. I will now entertain a motion to recess into executive session based on council's stated reasons.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Dr. Sen?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
The motion is approved with 7 yes votes, and we are.
I will now entertain a motion to return to open meeting from the executive session.
So move.
Second.
Second. Mr. Miller? Yes. Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Dr. Sen?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion to come back in open session is approved with 7 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is board agenda item number 4A, discussed in executive session. Karen?
This is an ordinance to approve a collective bargaining agreement that is a tentative agreement with the Bridge Structural and Reinforcing Iron Workers Local Union Number 1. Very briefly, effective 6/1/16 through 5/31/17, the total wage and fringe benefit package will increase by $2.50 per hour. The total wage and fringe benefit package will increase by $2.50 per hour by 6/1/17 and $2.60 per hour effective 6/1/18. The term of the tentative agreement is 6/1/16 through 5/31/19.
All right. Thank you, Karen. I now entertain a motion to approve an ordinance authorizing execution of a collective bargaining agreement containing the terms of a tentative agreement with the Bridge Structural and Reinforcing Iron Workers Local Union Number 1.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Dr. Sen?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 7 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. Our next order of business is board item number 4B, also discussed in executive session. Karen?
This is an ordinance to authorize CTA's acquisition of a parcel of real property located at 3346, 3348 North Clark Street in Chicago for the Red and Purple Modernization Project. This property was previously identified by the board for acquisition due to construction needs for RPM. The property is a 2-story commercial building and is owned by Gary Kita. CTA and the seller have reached an agreement for CTA to purchase the property for $514,500, and the Departments of Planning and Law recommend the purchase of the property at this amount.
Thank you, Karen. I now entertain a motion to approve an ordinance authorizing the acquisition of real property
Move it.
located at 3346 to 3348 North Clark Street, Chicago, Illinois, for the Red and Purple Modernization Project.
Move it.
Second.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Dr. Sen?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 7 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is board item number 4C, also discussed in executive session. Karen?
This involves a wrongful death lawsuit pending in the Circuit Court of Cook County entitled Star Saceda as the independent administrator of the estate of Celia Saceda versus CTA and bus operator Everett Burnett. The plaintiff's decedent was crossing the street at 47th and Western Boulevard in an area with construction. She apparently tripped and fell as she entered the crosswalk and was struck by the bus when it began to move forward for a green light. The law department recommends that this lawsuit be settled with a payment of $1.6 million, which plaintiff has agreed to accept from CTA to resolve the litigation.
Thanks, Karen. I will now entertain a motion to approve the settlement of Star Saceda as independent administrator of the estate of Cecilia Saceda versus Chicago Transit Authority Circuit Court of Cook County, case number 14L9702, a recommendation of $1.6 million.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Dr. Sen?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 7 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is board item number 5A. Our presenters will be Robert Smith and Pat Daly.
Good morning. My name is Robert Smith. I'm the Chief Transit Officer.
And I'm Pat Daly, the VP of Security for CTA.
During President Carter's first year, he's had a primary focus on improving safety and also improving the customer experience for our riding public. And as part of that effort, one of the things that he's done is to ask us to update the rules of conduct for our passengers, which was originally passed in 1998. The ordinance spells out regulations on our customers that conduct, passengers designed to promote welfare for the safety of all of our riders. So these are the first substantial updates that we've had since the 1998, and the amendments to the code are intended to strengthen, to update, and to memorialize changes to CTA ordinances that would make the ride more comfortable and pleasant to our riders. And it also allows for better enforcement by CTA and also by the Chicago Police Department Public Transit Unit. This, some of the details of it is such that many of them are minor changes. Some are more for existing regulations, and then some are new. Most of these changes are obviously related to safety, and again, deal with not blocking the way people get on and off our vehicles, bus and rail, and also for large items such as luggage and other parcels that may come on. We don't want them to either block the aisles or block the way you get on and off. It's also, we made sure that it included such things as skateboards and hoverboards and the like. These are common prohibitions that you'll find in our industry around the country, and it's out there. And most of the updates are as a result of feedback from our customers and also from staff observations. And one other detail is that it increases the ability to fine up to $300. So those are the major details that we have that we want to put before you today. And we're here today to answer any questions you may have of us.
Any questions?
I have a couple. One is we are going to publicize this, right? We are going to put out a press release and put out details. So, am I correct?
So before we can actually enforce this ordinance, once it's finalized by law, we have to publish it in a newspaper of general circulation, the entire ordinance. And we cannot begin even to enforce it until 10 days after that publication. So,
No, I'm not talking so much about enforcement as I'm talking about making sure people know this.
Customer, yes, there'll be a customer awareness component to this to ensure that our customers are aware of the code of conduct that we expect of them and reminding them of, appropriate behavior on CTA.
Thank you. The other question I have is that what is the point of, if a person tries to get past the turnstiles, is that where we'll stop them? Or we're going to sort of take a look at the video and see someone with a lot of luggage and do something about it?
I'd like to say that many of the ordinances we have now and are currently in existence, and that is one of the points where we will be able to intercede. It's at the turnstile, at the front door of a bus, and so on. It could also be actually on the vehicle itself.
Because I think a lot of people who, come in with a lot of luggage, well, they probably can't pay their $300 fine, so that's
It's not a question of paying a fine, it's a question of whether or not you're creating a safety hazard. And if it's a safety hazard, the fine is not going to be the resolution of the issue. Obviously, if you're creating a safety hazard, we're going to want to remove the hazard. I think that the other point I would make is that our employees are also going to be trained on how to interact with our customers around these issues in an appropriate way, and obviously with the support of Pat Daly and his team and the Chicago Police Department to make sure we're doing this in an appropriate way, that this is not intended to be an intimidation or something else of our customers. It's really just ensuring that all of our customers can have an enjoyable ride and can be safe, and that's really the focus of what we're talking about here.
Any other questions?
So on that line with the President Carter, so we have something in place for training our internal staff regarding the reporting of these incidences as well, and when they don't report, what will be the ramifications, because it will actually impact the safety of our customers going forward.
That's correct. We do have that in place.
And do we have, is this kind of on the tail end of the homeless on the bus also that we had before?
Yeah, this is not about homelessness. It's really about conduct. To the extent that any CTA customer is engaging in behavior that's inappropriate on our system, regardless of their status or situation, we would treat it the same way.
And just to comment, Robert, in terms of just kind of following up on what Director Sin mentioned about getting the word out, I'm assuming that once we've gotten past the 10-day waiting period, it will be incorporated into our sound. You know how we kind of announce, new rules, so it'd be part of the new message on both buses and trains in terms of anything that's, announced. Because one of the things I was looking at was the strollers has been an issue from time to time. Those kind of things, so.
Yes, we do. We actually have an education program that we will implement once it's passed.
Okay. And it's probably going to have to be a continuous educational process because you won't get everybody with a press release, even though it was, things get announced on television or in the paper that we're doing. I think it has to be just an ongoing educational process for our public. Because again, I'm just thinking about Mr. Higgins, who was here earlier. We talked about no smoking on our buses. For me, I consider our shelters to be a I know we've got to work with CDOT on that, but to me, this rule would also apply from a non-smoking or no smoking zone to our shelters as well, where our passengers are waiting. So I just think it's going to be a continuous educational process.
Yes, sir. Okay.
I just want to commend President Carter and the staff for making these changes and updates, because I do think this is going to help improve the customer experience, and hopefully the better it gets, the more we'll see ridership growing back on bus and increasing the gains we made on rail. So thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you. I now entertain a motion to approve an ordinance amending ordinance number 006-75, which reinstate ordinance number 98-126 regarding rules of conduct to promote health, safety, and welfare on property owned, operated, and maintained by the Chicago Transit Authority.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Dr. Sen?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarado-Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 7 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is a report from the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Director Silva.
The Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget met earlier this morning. The committee approved the August minutes and reviewed the finance report. The committee also reviewed the following agenda items: an ordinance amending Ordinance 05-119, amending the fiscal year 2016 to 2020 Capital Improvement Program, an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Chicago through its Department of Transportation for the purchase and installation of authority fare equipment at various locations, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of blanket railroad protective liability insurance for policy year November 1st, 2016 through October 31st, 2017, and 11 purchase and sales award recommendations. After review, the committee approved all of these items and placed all the items on the omnibus and recommended the omnibus for board approval. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Director Silva. May I now have a motion to approve the omnibus as stated by Director Silva?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Dr. Sen?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarado-Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 7 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is a construction report. Chris?
Directors, Chris Bouchel, your Chief Infrastructure Officer.
Mary Person, Director of Diversity Programs.
So today we'll be discussing 3 projects: the 95th Street Station Project, the Wilson Station Project, and the 5-station Your New Blue Project. The first project is the 95th Terminal Improvement Program, or Terminal Improvement Project. I'm pleased to say that work has begun on the design-build contract. You'll see some photographs momentarily. We are in the process, we have started that work. There is a significant lane closure now in the area of the station. And in addition, work has commenced on the right-of-way. And we continue to work with Mary, the community, and the contractor to let contracts associated with upcoming pieces of work. Most particularly caissons, the construction of caissons. I'll explain that in a second for the new terminals, as well as systems work, which in this case is really traction power, signal, and track associated with the improvements to the station. Most particularly, you can see, so we have started this temporary work to remove some of the track in the areas where we're going to install caissons. Given the intricacy of this work and some of the challenges in this area, we actually used in-house forces to start that work. It's a pretty small piece of work concentrated on removing some track, as well as creating a place for the contractor to bring in their caisson drilling equipment, which will come in next week. The area that I'm talking about specifically, so this is from the 95th Street Bridge looking south. You can see there is currently now a lane closure on the left-hand side on the far right-hand lane of the inbound lanes. And you can kind of see where that orange cone is. That's basically where we're creating the cut in the wall for the contractor to bring their equipment in through this area. In subsequent months, you'll see more photographs that illustrate that a little more clearly. And because we're starting to drill the caissons on the southbound track, or the track on the right-hand side of the photograph, that track has subsequently been removed. And that's where the new caissons are going to be drilled, pretty much along or near the line of the existing expressway median or expressway wall there, which will also be moved too. So I guess that's clear. It's a little. I'm sorry. I apologize for the confusing explanation, but I'll have some photographs and subsequent reports that will make it a lot clearer. Basically, we took out a piece of track so we could put some foundations in.
There you go.
Sorry. Wilson Transfer Station continues ahead of schedule and on budget. We have a phase change that's coming up where we are completing the work on track 2. And we'll subsequently be running service on that track. That work is just a little bit ahead of the contract milestones, which is always good. See the station house is starting to emerge. And I guess one thing I'll talk about that phase is probably the most important thing, is that many of our customers will not be using the older stations any longer or the older platform. That's got to be probably the best news about this intermediate step, is that all of our passengers at the station now will be starting more and more to use new infrastructure instead of infrastructure that's in some cases over 100 years old. So that's good, and the station in that effort continues to move towards accessibility. It's not accessible yet, but those elements are important pieces of what we're working on and will be delivered in subsequent phases. So advancing that work and generally exposing our customers to more and more new and improved elements is underway. You can see here the installation of the track, the new track system on track 2. This is generally the red line southbound tracks. We will be running trains on it northbound. There is more information on our website about some of the particulars of routing through this area. That would be a truly confusing topic if I went through there, but not so confusing to our customers. It is actually fairly intuitive, and we're working very closely with Brian and his team to make sure that we have the right signage and explanation. And Mr. Smith and his team have been doing a great job in working with us in terms of any minor coordination that's needed for this particular phase change. The 5-station project continues. I would say the platform work right now, we're predominantly at the Harlem station. We continue to work, I guess, at the Harlem, most particularly on the northbound side. We continue to work at Harlem, and then we also continue with the elevator at Addison. The photographs I have show you the elevator tower that's being installed or has been installed at this point, and we continue now to work on the build-out of that, again, focusing on accessibility as this project wraps up at the end of this year. So the project also is on schedule.
Which station is this one?
This is Addison. This is of the 5 stations, this is the one where we're not just doing repairs and other modernizations, but where we're adding accessibility as one of the key features. So this is the elevator tower in which the elevator is currently being installed. So minor work continues on some of the platforms. The major work at the moment is at Harlem, but minor work continues on other ones, with the exception of Addison, where it's not minor work, we're installing an elevator.
All right, any questions or comments for Chris?
All right, thank you.
I've got a recommendation. I know you're not spearheading it or driving it, but I'd like to be briefed on the Madison, Washington, Wabash project. I mean, it's just a huge project, and I don't think the board has had an opportunity to just, I know CDOT, you're partnering with them, and they're kind of driving it, just like to get an update.
We can provide information on that project,
Okay, all
absolutely.
right, great. All right. Greg, is there any new business to come before the board?
Just 2 quick things, Chairman. One is to remind the board and everybody that the next meeting is on a Friday. October 14th is the Wednesday is the observance of Yom Kippur. So our next board meeting is Friday, October 14th. And the second thing is, Chairman, you always ask me about Garland, how Garland's doing, because he hasn't been here for a while.
I see he's here.
Yes, and as we know,
Lovely wife, exactly.
let me just say something. As we know, the board knows and the president knows that see something, say something is certainly the primary communication goal of this authority, and no one except Garland would ever bother to look at the top of a Ventra machine at our Harlem terminal and notice something up there, which happened to be a free ride pass that somebody had somehow misplaced up there, and knowing what to do and returning it right away and getting it back to the person quickly, sort of is the example of how our customers are certainly our best eyes and ears out in the authority. And Garland wanted you to know that, so I thought since you've been asking about where Garland has been, that I would certainly let you and the president know that in public session. So since Garland is here today.
Thank you, Garland. Thank you very much. Appreciate
Yes,
it.
thank you, I appreciate it.
That's all I have, Chairman.
Since there is no new business to come before the board, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.